Anna Marie Cox. And where are you going? So full of hope. There is no hope.
Hi, I'm Daniel Dresner, and Anna, we've done some mighty things together. Goodbye! Honestly, best line in the movie. I did laugh out loud, and it's just an offhand delivery by Hemsworth. It's the best line in the movie. Yes.
He's kind of the best thing in the movie, which I know we'll discuss more.
Yeah.
Welcome to Space the Nation, where we look at science fiction through the lens of...
extractive institutions.
and imaginative criminology. I got through that good enough, especially for a film set in Australia. Today, we'll be talking about Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, which is available at theaters, and they've already announced a streaming date. Dan, that's not a good
that's
sign.
not a good sign. No.
In the next few weeks, we are going to embrace our tradition of hot sci-fi summer, which is usually big, dumb stuff.
Oh, the next film will definitely meet that criteria, yes.
Sometimes not dumb, always big, but apparently the next one is big and dumb.
Dumb.
Atlas.
Very dumb. Yeah, I'm just going to preview that now. It's a dumb film.
And we were talking about doing a patrons-only episode about Madam Web. Is that too much dumb in 1 week, Dan?
No, it's summer.
Okay.
We're talking dumb. I mean, it should be
brain
dumb.
Brain is on vacation. At least
yes.
Dan's brain is on vacation.
Exactly. My brain has been working hard this year so far. It needs a week off.
All right.
Yeah.
And then we're going to do some of the greatest crossovers ever, starting with Star Trek Generations. And then we talked about doing Deadpool Wolverine as well.
Oh, yeah, we're definitely doing that, but that's not being released until the end of July. So that's
right.
on the schedule, but not.
I'm excited enough about that I may watch the original Deadpool.
We could add the original Deadpool to the schedule. We could do that.
I think that would be fun. I've been enjoying doing the 1-2 punch stuff we've been doing.
Yeah.
Although we did do too many Planet of the Apes movies. I think that is safe to say.
That's on me. I remember that's on me. I apologize for that because I mistimed the calendar. That's definitely a problem.
And we have lots of ideas. We're always taking suggestions. I want to preview an idea that I texted you, preview for other people, which is this idea that we've been talking about the problem of Butler-Vember or Woe-Vember, which is, do we do Octavia Butler or the films of Keanu Reeves?
Yes.
And I think I have an interesting compromise.
Given the election season that we are about to enter, I like this. This sets things up well. What is your idea, Anna?
Octavia Ober.
Or Octoberavia. I think I like that better.
Octoberavia?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And then Woe-Vember.
Woe-Vember.
Yeah, so we have like some serious stuff that might actually be, topical.
Yeah.
And then no matter what happens, even if it's the worst case scenario, we're going to be talking about Keanu Reeves.
Yep.
Yeah. And perhaps dystopias, depending on what on what direction the country chooses to go. Moving on.
Yes.
Man.
That was
people can become patrons.
Such a seamless segue. Yes. There are lots of ways that this can happen, and I consulted ChatGPT on this very question. The first answer it spit out was something like, put glue on your pearls or something, but it might have been, that might have just been like the AI not working terribly well. It did eventually suggest go to patreon.com/spacethenation, and you can become a patron for as little as $3 a month. In terms of the benefits you get from patronage, oddly, ChatGPT was like, you get like deluxe treatment at, first class airports and hotels. And again, I really think that they need to work on
sixth finger.
Yeah, exactly. The large language models have some flaws when it comes to answering this question. But a little further down, it pointed out you get early access to our podcasts. You get access to our semi-monthly AUAs. You get access to our amazing Discord channel, which features a lot of really bright, smart, and funny, witty people talking about various things, some of which is sci-fi, some of which is not sci-fi. And perhaps the most important thing, if you become a patron, the ads that you heard at the opening in the first 2 minutes of this episode, you would not have to hear.
And that's how you know you're not a patron,
yeah.
is if you hear ads.
Yes, exactly.
And I was going to say, Dan, you hate ads? There's no shame in hate.
I don't know, Anna.
You can't avoid them. You
Add to the
can.
land of opportunity.
Okay. Am I going to need to make a rule about Australian accents?
Fine. You started it, though. I just want to be clear on this.
I did start it. Okay, so we're talking about Furiosa Mad Max Saga. I almost couldn't say it right.
Mm-hmm.
I had problems with this movie. Apparently, right down to the title. But why are we doing it? Why are we talking about it?
So we are doing this because, before we went in to see it, you had me at George Miller makes a post-apocalyptic film. I mean, even the worst of the Mad Max films. The worst Mad Max film up till now was Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. And Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome is still wildly entertaining and has an amazing performance by Tina Turner. So, there's a high floor to any Mad Max George Miller directed film. Really, honestly, that's true just of George Miller directed films. He really hasn't made a clunker. He's made a few, mediocre films, but, nothing.
Okay.
I say this as someone
who... Why this. We'll stick with why this first.
Yeah. And I say this as someone who liked 3,000 Years of Longing, which was not as widely well received. So, yeah.
Why this? George Miller.
Yeah.
The man has range.
Yes, there we go.
We know that.
Yeah.
The man has range. And I honestly was a little hesitant because, well, I was reminded of Fury Road's transcendence. I was hesitant to watch Fury Road again because I'd loved it so much on the big screen.
And it held up.
Watching the small screen totally held up. Found it just transporting, I think might be a good word. It is a film we've only done movies like this rarely, which is when I forget to take notes. That's how good it was. I'm so moved along.
Yeah. You're caught up in it. You're just watching it. You can't. Yeah. No, that was not this film. Just to be clear, we're on it. Just a preview. Anna and I are both in agreement that Furiosa is not nearly as good as Fury Road. I think I liked it a little better than Anna did, and so I will probably defend it a little more than I would ordinarily do. But just to be clear, we're in agreement. This is not. And close
I'm trying
to
remember that. I am probably biased. And now, actually, we already kind of got into this, which is, will this podcast ruin it for you? Should you stop the tape, I will say tape, right now, and go into the movie and see the film, which is also not a film, in the sense it's not on film, because everything's digital, including there not being tape. But anyway, should people stop the podcast right now and go see it, or safely listen and then go see it?
So my answer to this is I don't think you need to see it before our conversation. First of all, it's a prequel. If you've seen Fury Road, you're probably going to have a good sense of which characters live and which characters die in this one. It's not going to be a real shock. I will say that some people liked it. In Hot Sci-Fi Summer, one of the things I'm looking forward to is taking my daughter Lauren to see these films because this is her bread and butter as well. And I think anytime I take her, I'm going to provide her one sentence review for any film. In this case, it was, quote, "That was metal," unquote.
Great review. That can go on a poster without any editing or false, context. I didn't love it. I think it's very skippable. I think that I wish I'd skipped it in a way. Maybe I would have enjoyed it more on the small screen. I don't know. It was fine. I got my popcorn and Coke and it was a diverting afternoon. I did get bored.
It is a longer film. This is the thing that surprised me. Fury Road is not just a great film. It's also it's 2 hours. It's a tight 2 hours. This is a much longer film. I think it's 2 hour, 2.5 at least. And I'm not sure it needed to be, I guess would be the way to put it.
It felt it. It really felt it.
So we should get to the story behind the story. And my question to you, Anna, in terms of the story behind the story is, in some ways, this film, just like Fury Road, is one that Miller had thought about for quite some time. As listeners to our previous episode know, Miller planned on shooting these films back to back. And in the end, did not, unsurprisingly, because production took so long, which sort of took Charlize Theron out of the picture. But I guess my question is, why did it take so long to eventually get around to making this film?
Litigation, Dan. Simple answer.
Litigation? Really?
Litigation. Yeah, Miller sued.
I almost want you to say that in Dementis voice, because that would be a Dementis answer.
Litigation.
Well, you got litigation.
Litigation.
Yes.
Yeah, so Miller sued Warner Brothers, and it was in, I think, Australian court for a while.
Wow.
And it got, I believe, settled, and that happened. But the original reason it was delayed is because, of course, it turned out that Fury Road was this huge thing,
Right.
right? Like it was just going to take all of his attention.
Yeah.
The idea of shooting them back to back was just prohibitively huge.
Yes.
Also, Furiosa, as much of an undertaking as Fury Road was, Furiosa is now the most expensive film in Australian history.
Wow.
With a budget of $333 million Australian. Not sure what that is, US.
Damn it, this, like, I'm supposed to know this, but I always forget the exchange rate.
You want to look for it? Do people care? I continue
care.
talking. Okay. Over half of that was, well, I should say, they get a film. I don't know if half of it, this might have been in addition to, who knows. But the film did get a huge filming incentive from the Australian government, the New South Wales government, of $175 million, and various quote unquote offsets from the federal government.
Wait, so
like,
this was the most
included in the $333 million. Like, I don't know if that's on top of the incentives or not. So I think it's on top of. I mean, who knows? What's the exchange rate now?
The exchange rate is $1 US is equivalent to 150 Aussie, which means this is be about a $222 million production in American.
All right.
Which is pretty expensive, but I don't know if it's the most expensive.
Pretty expensive. Hold on. I have my own little Mad Max here. Bram's in the Wasteland. So, all right. So super expensive, employed 3,000 people, including some formerly incarcerated people who were hired as supporting artists. The action sequence where the raiders attack the war rig took 78 days to shoot, which is in some movies, that's the whole shoot.
Yeah.
As you know.
That's actually longer than a lot of shoots, yes.
Yeah. So close to 200 stunt performers who worked on it every day. It went over by about a month. Some interesting news on casting. Miller considered de-aging Charlize Theron, which I guess we're glad he didn't. Though, I will point out that this movie, well, I think it's technically supposed to take place 15 years before Fury Road. Well, but it makes it look like it ends the day before.
Yes. I mean, the other thing, though, is that this movie, I think, stretches 15 years from beginning to end of the film. Because it starts with Furiosa as a child, like a preteen, and it ends with her, I don't know, like... So,
Charlize, a wonderful, woman that she is, very graceful about the whole thing. Mm-hmm. She, I think, found out from media that she had been replaced.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
You know what? Charlize deserved better on that one. That's bad move by like either Miller or Warner Brothers or whatever. But like that's
true.
Yeah,
it's true.
Although I suspect she would not have necessarily wanted to do it. By the way. Based on
that is true. Although since Tom Hardy wasn't there, maybe she would have considered it. Oh, and actually, she read the treatment of it when she was doing Fury Road and got really excited about it. In fact, told Miller he should do it first. So
Miller's not. I mean, she wasn't wrong about that. It actually would have been fascinating if they had reversed it, because first of all, it would have meant Charlize Theron was a little more used to how the production process was going to go, and I would wager that maybe, like, admittedly, it would have been hard dealing with Tom Hardy no matter what, but it might have actually established the necessary power relationship between the two of them a little bit better than the original, than as they did it. So it's a shame, actually.
I agree. And also, preview for what I think of Anya Taylor-Joy. I think that Charlize Theron has charisma level that would have helped this movie a lot. Mm-hmm. So Miller, though, liked Anya Taylor-Joy right away. He saw her in a movie that I cannot remember, but whatever, he wanted her to do a test. He had her read the speech from Network, the I'm as mad as hell speech.
Yeah, I saw that, which was interesting, but okay, sure.
Yeah, he says that that's what he gives a lot of actors, which I find interesting, but kind of cool. Ginger blonde, nice. Chris Hemsworth was cast right away. He was very excited about it. He's Australian, obviously, and had grown up watching the Mad Max movies. So it's kind of a dream come true for him. Imperator Jack was originally cast as Yahya Abdul Mateen II, who listeners might recognize from the Aquaman movies, or what's the other he's in?
He was in the Watchmen HBO show.
He's in the Watchmen HBO show. He's in a lot of stuff. I think he would have been fucking fantastic.
He would have been good. Yeah.
I think the universe, in the metaverse, the universe in which he's in this movie completely different and better. I think he's very much missed. Nicholas Hoult from the other movie was in the menu with Anya Taylor-Joy. Apparently they're good friends, and this is actually sort of a funny thing that he said to her. You've got this, you're going to be okay.
Jesus Christ. That's a well-meaning statement, but I have to admit, if I was like, say what you will about Anya Taylor-Joy, she went into this eyes open. I mean, the entire nature of the production process was well known by this point.
To get back to Hemsworth, he was very excited about it. Like I said, dream come true. What I think is hilarious is he said that it allowed him to, quote, get out of the typecast of the muscly action guy and to play a character with complications of darkness. And he explained that, quote, suffering without a purpose is awful, but suffering with a purpose can be rejuvenating and replenishing, which is kind of a thing you don't want to hear people say about a movie, I think.
Yeah.
An actor, although, and Taylor-Joy has said, as I was about to say earlier, she doesn't want to talk about it for like 20 years. So, but she learned how to drive. She learned how to drive for this movie, believe it or not. She doesn't have a license. And she says, I don't have a license. I can't parallel park. I can't go on the highway. I still don't have one, but she can do the handbrake, squeal, stop. So
that's
give
pretty
this
good.
her, she said in one of the interviews. At some point that will come in handy, I'm assuming. So she seems like a good egg, I will say.
Yes. No, the thing I was going to say is that, say what you will about Anya Taylor-Joy, she had to have gone into this eyes open. Like, she knew what by the time she agreed to do this, like, it was full knowledge of what had happened the first time around. So, Shall we get to Chekhov's What's It? This is the thing that appears in the first act of the film that might wind up being kind of salient by the third act. This was obvious, but it seemed obvious, nonetheless important to say. Chekhov's Peach Pit.
That's gross. I don't like that storyline. My runner-up would be Chekhov's shaved head.
That's good. Good. Yeah.
Thank you.
I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And with all that said, we now have to talk about the plot, there is so much more plot.
Yes. This is not just a simple, we're driving that way and driving back. Nope. This one has a lot more intricate of a plot. Yes. All right.
And that's a weakness.
Yes. No, it's true. It's true. All right, but let's get to it. Act 1, The Fast and the Furiosa. We meet a preteen Furiosa in the green place of many mothers. A pretty verdant forest for the middle of Australia. By the way, even in pre-apocalyptic times. Like, the opening shot is like a satellite shot of Australia. It goes into the middle. I'm pretty sure the middle of Australia is just a fucking desert already. Like, that was one of the things that I was eye-raising for me.
Here's a theory.
Yeah.
The nuclear war somehow cracked open.
Oh, I like that. Created some verdant
aquifer.
Sure. I like that. That's good. Anyway, she is picking fruit along with Valkyrie when she sees a gang doing some serious marauding. She tries to sabotage their bikes, but is kidnapped by them to give as a trophy to their warlord Dementis. Furiosa's mother, Mary, pursues them to the Horde's camp, picking apart the raiders one by one before they can divulge the location of the green place. Mary infiltrates the camp during a sandstorm and takes Furiosa back, but Dementis and his gang pursue. Mary sacrifices herself so Furiosa can escape, but she returns to her mother instead. Dementis forces Furiosa to watch her mother's execution and then keeps her in the hopes that she will reveal the location of the green place. While wandering, Dementis and his horde come across a war boy and infer from his description that the green place is the Citadel controlled by Immortan Joe. One surprise to me when I was watching this film was just how much, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, Alyla Browne, who played the younger Furiosa, was in it. Honestly, she's in it for I think at least half the film, and she was great, I actually thought. And also reveals yet again that one of Miller's gifts as a director is to get great performances from actors with minimal dialogue. I think she has maybe like 3 lines in the entire film, but she's great, I thought.
I think she's as good as Taylor-Joy, which I'm not sure is a compliment, but
yep.
Although, just a preview for my, the least I can say, I actually liked her. I mean, maybe
she's legitimately good.
Actors. I actually, maybe I'm just loosening up in how much I generally hate child actors, but I was not aware of how much I hate child actors. I wasn't thinking to myself, she's good for a child actor.
You were just thinking
like,
she's good.
I was just like, this is a good performance. I mean,
Yeah.
The character frustrated the fuck out of me.
Yeah.
When she goes back for her mom, and I understand not everyone has the fraught relationship with my mother that I do. And maybe I would go back for my mom in that situation. But her mom pretty much was like, don't come back for me. Right? Like, and also it's clear that Furiosa has been able to really take in how important it is to tell no one about the green place. Right?
Yes. We'll talk about that problem a little bit later, but yes.
So she should have just left. Right? So
I think it's made harder for the one thing I will say here is that I think weirdly, as an audience viewer, it's even more painful because what Furiosa doesn't know and what we know is the extent to which basically all of the sort of feats of strength, for lack of a better way of putting it, that Mary has to get through in order to be able to get Furiosa and take her back. And so the fact that that all seems in the end for naught is even more frustrating. So yeah, that's fair.
And I have some other nitpicks about everyone's strategery in this movie.
Yeah,
like I feel like there are no one in this movie has read The Art of War. Like no one.
Anna, this is the Dumb and Dumberer
has played chess.
of yeah. No, when it comes to governance in this film, this is like this could belong in the Dumb and Dumber film series. Let's put it that way. You're right to
Would be interesting to teach this movie at the War College. That's what I'm saying. Is like
whatever you do, just do the opposite of in this film, and you were fine. Yes, like that. Yeah.
The first thing. Shouldn't the green place have some kind of sentries, Dan? Shouldn't there be some kind of like early warning system?
Well, let me put it this way:
marauders come in.
So I was going to talk about this later, but it's worth pointing out. This is, by the way, why I pushed back in our previous episode when you were describing what the Vuvellini did, because when you actually see the green place,
you'd seen this movie, which goes against what George Miller had said earlier.
Exactly. But the other thing is, you're absolutely right. In order for this green place to survive, you would have to have strong deterrence, which means anyone who comes close to you, you would either have to just basically bang, bang. And by the way, like, to be fair, that's in the film. Like, when you see Mary leave, like, the other woman, the Vuvellini general basically says, look, no one can know where this place is.
But it should be, if you see this place.
Yes.
Like, it should be like, you have sentries, like, a few miles out.
Even a moat. Maybe a moat would have been a good idea. Like, you know, like, there's a lot of
things. Mines.
Yes. Like,
something.
By the way, that was like one of those things that it puzzled me from the get-go. Like, again, you see Furiosa picking a peach, and then it cuts down, and the biker gang, they're there, they found it. What are they doing? I believe they're eating a person rather than, I don't know, eating the fruit.
They're horse.
Okay, they're eating a horse?
They've slaughtered a horse.
Okay.
All of these things are weird.
Yeah.
Also, they're right there, and she only hears them at that moment.
Yep.
Also, that was another point where I was like, why are you going to sneak up? It's a terrible sneak up job.
It's not great. No. Also, by the way,
very little stealth.
Yeah. I did like you realized, by the way, that her friend was Valkyrie, who is in Fury Road. It was I just liked that there was that, because it did reference that. That was good.
But we cannot get bogged down in how stupid everyone is.
No, we'd be here for a long time.
We have more stupidity to talk about.
All right, let's get to Act 2, Too Furious to Furiosa. Dementis attempts to shock and awe Immortan Joe into acquiescence, which works out poorly for his horde.
More like, what the fuck?
I would say this. So again, we'll talk about this, or just to preempt this. This is the structural problem with the sequel, which is we already know that Immortan Joe is not a great leader by any stretch of the imagination. And the problem is as a result of that, you have to have Dementis as being even dumber and more reckless than Immortan Joe, which means I just didn't care about the two of them, like butting heads. And so Dementis attempting to rally the troops or whatever, the scene doesn't work at all. And that's one of the real problems. Anyway, in response to this not working out for him, Dementis seizes a truck heading out of Gastown and Trojan horses it back in there, seizing the facility. He then strikes a bargain with Immortan.
And I know we'll talk about that.
Yeah, that was true.
Smart thing.
That was... We'll talk about that. That was absolutely clever. You're right. He strikes a bargain with Immortan Joe for increased deliveries of food and water in return for his personal physician, the organic mechanic, as well as Furiosa, who is locked in the potential wives' vault. Immortan Joe's son, Rictus, takes an unhealthy interest in Furiosa, but she escapes his clutches and passes as a mute grunt mechanic at the Citadel. Years later, Furiosa is assigned to build and crew a war rig led by Praetorian Jack. During one run, the rig is attacked by the Mortifiers, disgruntled former members of Dementis' gang. During the attack, and this is in the screenplay, Anna, it says, quote, "The Mortifiers become the Mortiflyers." In other words, they attack by paragliders and parachutes. Their attack kills everyone but Furiosa and Jack. She then tries to hijack the rig, but Jack kicks her out of the truck. Jack, however, recognizing her skills and purposeful savagery, promotes her to his second-in-command and offers to train her to escape the Citadel if she helps him rebuild his crew. Okay, Anna, this might be where we disagree the most. The action sequence during the stretch of the film, where in fact you start seeing the Mortifiers become the Mortiflyers, was my favorite. It's the one time I thought this film reached the absurd, giddy heights of Fury Road. And also the Bombie Knocker is just fucking awesome. Is like, it reminded me a little bit of the Doof Warrior. And I again, the weird thing is that it's the only real chase sequence that is at all gripping in the film, but it does work in my opinion.
It's good. Mm-hmm. It's fine. I did love the war rig itself.
Yeah,
which
beautiful.
I think is a finer piece of equipment than the war rig in Fury Road, with the frieze on the sides of it.
Yeah. With the more, I think like
there's war boys and stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very cool, very detailed. Really liked that. I did also like how she had to pay the price for how dumb her plan was.
Yes, I agree.
When Jack kicks her out and she's just like standing there on the road and she realizes, oh well, that didn't work. And
I will say this:
kind of just see her like trying to piece together, like, huh?
Yeah, let me put it this way. Remember how I said in the last episode that like Furiosa's plan to like escape with the wives didn't seem like a great plan? You have to admit the character is consistent in terms of the not great plans.
Yeah, well, it's the same plan basically.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
She only has one plan. That's her plan. And then I was going to talk about how terrible what's his name is here, but we can talk about, yeah. I mean, I don't like calling him terrible, but I really miss Tom Hardy. As I texted you, he has like the charisma of a stick shift. Like he's not. He's useful.
Let's hold off. Let's describe the next act, and then we'll talk about this because I agree it's worthy of discussion. But first, if you're not a patron, now is the time for our advertisements. We'll be right back after this Black Spiral.
Remember, this show is brought to you by Janked Up Teddy Bears. Janked Up Teddy Bears. They protect your junk.
That was pretty good, Anna. All right, let's get to Act 3, Furiosa Tokyo Drift. Shockingly, Dementis' grip on Gastown gets shakier, with worker discontent growing. Are you laughing at the shockingly part?
Yeah.
Yeah. After a botched delivery run by Jack and Furiosa, Dementis demands a parley among the warlords. Immortan Joe, sick of the mismanagement, sends Jack and Furiosa to the bullet farm to stock up on weapons for an assault on Gastown.
Mackenzie perished in the nuclear war.
That's why the management is so bad. They can't draw on management consultants. I like that. That's good. Dementis, however, beats Immortan Joe to the punch. Again, to be fair, another clever move by Dementis, seizing the bullet farm on his own and ambushing Jack's war rig. Furiosa helps Jack escape, but Dementis' horde catches up and runs them off the road, shooting Jack and maiming Furiosa's arm in the process. Dementis tortures Jack to death. Furiosa escapes only by severing her mauled left arm, which bore the tattooed map on the way how to get back to the Green Place. She returns to the Citadel to inform Immortan Joe of developments, and Joe decides it is time for war. All right, Anna, let's talk about two of the smaller male roles. The first was Rictus, who was a fun villain in Mad Max Fury Road. He provides comic relief while still being a menacing threat in that film. He is much creepier in this film because of the unhealthy interest he takes in Furiosa. I'm not sure how it worked, although I will acknowledge that his room with all of the dolls was disturbing. Like, that actually worked. Jack, on the other hand, you've expressed your problems with him. My problem with him was there are a lot of Mary Sues in this film, which there wasn't in Fury Road. Just people who are so competent at everything that they're not terribly interesting characters. I think this is true of both Furiosa's mom and Jack. And so it didn't work. But the other thing that doesn't work is like, and this I was surprised by, is that the reviews kept talking about the two of them as a romantic couple. And I did not see that at all. Like, I watched the film, was like, no, I'm not seeing any heat there.
I agree. In fact, there was a moment where they do that. They do the head hug.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, oh, cool to do a head hug between platonic friends, I guess. Like, there's no way that's supposed to signify romantic interest because they have the chemistry of two pieces of cardboard, right? So, okay, on the Matthew McConaughey, Jodie Foster versus, can't remember who we usually put on the hot side of that. Oh, I remember Jude Law and Ethan Hawke.
You have, on the other hand, is the
on the scale
Ethan Hawke and Jude Law. Yes.
So Jude Hawke, that is the slash. So if Jude Law,
Jude Hawke is there, yes,
and Matthew McConaughey and Jodie Foster are 1. Where are Furiosa and Jack? Dan,
this might be like violating canon. It's a 0 because let me put it this way: at least I knew that Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey were supposed to be a couple in Contact. I mean, it doesn't work, but they're trying. I was not aware watching this film. It's like, oh, are they supposed to be together? Really? Huh. Okay. That's an interesting interpretation of no chemistry.
Yeah. All right. We may have a new 0.
There we go.
Although this movie is so forgettable, I worry that if we introduce the canon,
Contact is still, I think,
okay, Contact is still
the reference point.
Our place of comparison. It's our reference point. Okay.
Yes.
And as far as Rictus goes, I think having as a character beat Furiosa outsmart Rictus as a sexual predator isn't terrible.
Yeah.
And they don't go that far with it.
Right. No, to be fair, nothing disturbing happens. And you're right. Like, she does outsmart him. I think in some ways I suppose it was fine. It just, actually, it retroactively made me enjoy Fury Road less because it was like, I didn't need to know this, is the way I would put it.
What I will say about that is that this is a much crueler movie than Fury Road. There is a lot of torture in this movie. And I really, you know what? I don't know why it's taken me this long to put that together, but now I'm realizing why I really didn't enjoy watching this movie. I think there are several scenes of torture. Like, we don't see it like carried out to the full extent. Like, we just get a hint of what's going to happen, and then the camera kind of goes to something else. But it's clear what kind of torture is going to happen. And
look, the way I would put it is Miller is not a sadistic director. You're right. Like, it's not awful to watch, but in terms of the plot,
it's not Saw.
It's not soft either. And also, you have to just deal with the fact that Dementis basically forces Furiosa to watch 2 torture sessions. That cannot be, that's awful. So, yeah. All right, let's close up this plot. Act 4, The Fate of the Furiosa. The 40-day War of the Wasteland ensues, and again, it does not go very well for Dementis. Joe fakes him out by making Dementis think Joe has deployed all of his forces to Gastown, giving him an edge in the war. Meanwhile, Furiosa constructs a mechanical left arm and demands a vehicle. She enters the battlefield, acquires some wheels, and pursues Dementis. After an extended chase of his crew, she eventually overtakes him. Furiosa reveals her identity and demands vengeance, but Dementis taunts her back, noting that revenge will not make her whole. What happens next is a bit unclear. We are narrated by History Man at this point. Maybe Furiosa killed Dementis in the desert. According to legend, however, she imprisoned Dementis in the Citadel and grew a peach tree from the last peach pit she held from the Green Place, using his body as soil or the Tree of Life or something like that. The important thing is that Furiosa eventually convinced Joe's other brides that it was time to try to find that Green Place again. Anna, what did you make of the ending confrontation between Furiosa and Dementis? It was way more talky talk than I was expecting, and I don't think it worked very well in the end.
My sort of personal headcanon is Dementis was a grad student. Like a
No,
philosophy grad student.
I'm gonna push back a little bit. Dementis is a disgruntled postdoc who can't get a job.
Oh,
That,
there you go. Yes, yes. Sorry. Yeah,
sorry,
no,
that's
there you go. And also, like, he was a kind of comfy grad student,
yeah. Oh yeah.
had TA positions,
Yeah,
had some like
yeah,
fellowships, and
exactly.
then like suddenly on the job market.
Golden Boy does not pan out. That's Dementis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did not like it. I mean, the message is great, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Revenge is not the same as becoming whole again or
Mm-hmm.
doing repair work. But I just thought it was dumb. And of course, I hated it's another kind of grotesquerie, right? Which is when we're forced to see the tree is
Mm-hmm.
growing out of his junk. It's it's unpleasant. It is an unpleasant image.
Yeah.
It is
The
unrealistic.
one thing
also,
I will,
like, how is he alive?
yeah,
I
sure.
mean,
The one saving grace I will give it, and by the way, I actually like this is the one thing I like about the way this film ends, and I think it's the way you have to look at all of the Mad Max films, which is this is always told as like a story around the campfire. This is like an oral history.
yeah.
And so I like the idea of it being told as a fable where, no, I think she actually killed him in the desert. But if you want to tell people that that's how it ended, sure, I would, I could see people embellishing the tale. So I didn't, I think
like
that's,
she used him as fertilizer. Like
yeah.
that.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Yeah.
Here, I will say, Chris Hemsworth trying, A for effort.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good job he's giving everything he has. I have in my notes, I was going to put in debris field, I have simply the note, why nose? Why nose?
I was in my debris field as well. My conclusion is that the nose is necessary because, no, it is in the sense that Chris Hemsworth is otherwise too pretty to play this serious a villain.
Kind of agree. I wish he'd gone a little more, like, less cut also.
Yeah, that part made no sense to me. Yeah, I mean, I understand.
He's up well into what is presumably late middle age.
Mm-hmm.
He has a very fine torso. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we don't see the rest of him, but he's got a wonderful torso. And Dan, I don't want to force you to speak to the difficulty to maintaining that kind of body, but
I maintained that body for 20 years. It's not easy. It really isn't. I don't like to talk about it. The things you have to do to get tenure.
You want to talk about your new SpawnCon deal with like Athletic One?
It's less well known, but one of the things about 21st century, academia, just the wash, the six pack we're required to keep is not easy to pull off. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So I did appreciate, like, as a viewer,
mm-hmm.
but also like not a ton of modesty going into that role.
True.
Fake nose. Okay. Thanks. But
I will say, like,
acting wise, charisma wise, great.
Let me put it this way. I think he's trying, and I think this is a case.
Yeah.
No, but I want to be clear. I think this is a case where the material fails him. I don't think he fails the material because he has played villains before, and he was chilling in both of them. Like, he was a villain in Spiderhead, which is actually a pretty good little sci-fi film on Netflix. And he also was the villain in, I think, something called like Last Times at the El Dorado or something, where he plays like a cult leader. And he, in both of those, he's like charismatic and evil. Like he pulls it off.
I think he is a good actor. I think that as he ages, will probably become a more interesting actor.
I look forward to him doing like the Chris Pine thing
into the whole like maintaining the Thor bod.
I agree. Yeah, I think you're right about that.
But we can stop theorizing about Chris Hemsworth now because there's a more important area of intellectual pursuit.
Sure.
I would like to follow.
Mm-hmm.
Dan.
Yes, Anna?
Is there IR in this movie? Is there dumb IR in this movie?
I apologize for the accent that's about to come. Do you want me to teach you, Anna? Muscle up your memory as we go along? Which I did like that line. There is some IR in this film. Whether it's well grounded is another question entirely. The thing that is actually kind of boring about this film, but it's definitely there, is that, anyone who's in charge of anything, you're basically dealing with extractive institutions. In other words, you were dealing with some sort of warlord who is basically trying to squeeze out as much surplus as possible from, whatever labor and or natural resources you can get. And, it does harken back to some sort of standard John Hicks economic history theories of the origin of the state as a protection cartel. It should be stressed, Dementis is not good at this. Like, one of the real problems with this film is that he is bad at it.
Okay.
Yes?
Quick interruption on this.
Yeah.
How bad is he? That whole nipple clamp to trigger thing?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, it
Like,
made no sense to me. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
No.
I mean, if you don't know what we're talking about and haven't seen the movie, good. Not a good scene. Just, I think the image of nipple clamp to trigger should
I agree. Yes.
express it enough that you know it's not a good idea.
Let's be very clear. Like, he lucks his way into controlling Gastown. He could have just sat pretty there. Like, that's actually, he negotiates a reasonably sweet deal, and yet he can't even run that well. Like, this is, again, part of the structural problem with the film is that we have to conclude he's even worse than Immortan Joe, who we think is already pretty bad because we watched Mad Max Fury Road, and also we've seen him in this. The only way Immortan Joe is any better is, and I will give him credit here, he does lean into the theocratic elements of being a warlord. Like, I will say, I didn't care about Dementis's challenge. I was somewhat amused by, like, how Joe responds, which is basically to have a war boy just sort of commit suicide as a demonstration of, look, you're really going to fuck with me? I mean, have you seen what I have? So that was fair. I will say, I said this already, but you're right. This would also apply to the Green Place. Like, the only way the Green Place can survive and thrive would be, in fact, to be somewhat better at, like, managing the ecosystem. But more importantly, they would have to kill anyone who knew anything about it that was not willing to sort of join their group. So, one can assume based on how well Furiosa's mother picked apart people that they were, but it seemed like it would have required a little more effort. And I agree with you. They should have mined stuff. The one thing I will say about Dementis, his one really innovative thing was the credible commitment and costless signaling, which was Dementis actually killing his own men, the Mortifiers, for the Trojan Horse Gambit to work. It was a legitimately clever act, and it's what brings him Gastown. Also, Joe gives in to Dementis way too easily at first. He never should have struck the deal where Dementis controls Gastown. He should have known that was going to bite him in the ass. And by the way, Dementis should have been killed by his own men way sooner than what actually happened. Again, one of the things that you see Dementis doing throughout the entire film is just treating his followers like shit. And honestly, my favorite line that he has is the last one where it's like his last core supporters, they're like in Berchtesgaden, it's about to end, and he's like, well, we've done some great things together, bye, and like they all split. It's almost weird, Anna, how like large numbers of people can fall under the spell of a convicted felon and not like question whether maybe he doesn't have their best interests at heart. But I guess it's plausible. Maybe it could happen. I don't know.
Big guy with fake hair? Yeah.
Fake hair? Yeah. That speaks in a bombastic tone, doesn't make a ton of sense. I'm not drawing from any real world example. I'm just suggesting, that's a way to go.
Claims to strike good deals.
Yeah. Always claims to strike a good bargain. It's true. But always also wants to renegotiate. Always insists on renegotiating. Yeah. It's a shame there were no courts. It was a shame that like you couldn't sue constantly. Dementis, I think I would have taken that route if he could have. Anna, I do have a question for you, by the way. It just occurs to me out of the blue.
Oh, Dan, please continue.
Is there a critique of capitalism in this film?
Dan, I guess there is. But I also think that me wanting to find a critique of capitalism in this film isn't hope. It's instinct. The critique of capitalism is kind of how big and dumb this movie is, which harkens back to something I said before, which is that, to try and warn people about spectacle by giving them spectacle, right? And I think I can invoke friend of the pod, Theodore Adorno here. Mm-hmm. He is trying to wring something out of the previous really vibrant vision. Miller, is trying to wring something out of the vibrant vision of Fury Road. And I think in some ways, like, if you consider this movie as a kind of performance art, like self-commentary, meta-criticism, it kind of works. Because, what Adorno talks about is de-arting art and like fraying the edges of art. And also like taking IP and continuing to use IP until it's lost its meaning. And the film itself, in the world of the film, there's nothing original.
Yeah.
Right? Every piece of machinery is made from an old piece of machinery. Mm-hmm. And the logos and emblems and brands of our previous age are treated as a kind of art. So if you kind of look at it as Miller commenting on his own movie, it works. And of course, the really genius kind of meta commentary and self-criticism here is that people hated this movie. So, I mean, they stayed.
This movie has not done well at the box office. Yes, yes, yes. I will say this.
So,
it's not that I disagree with anything you just said, and I think you're like seeing this. You're like basically why did he do it? I think the one thing I'm legitimately puzzled by is that according to everything that we know about it, Miller came up with this idea as he came up with Fury Road. And I do find it legitimately puzzling that Fury Road is as amazing as it is, and this film, falls so flat compared to Fury Road. I mean, again, I think it's better than you think it is. Fury Road is a much better film on almost every dimension. And it's not like the studio came to him and begged him to make this. He wanted to make it, and yet it doesn't work.
I agree. I mean, it winds up being, if you follow my logic, like a commentary on repurposing IP without meaning to be.
Yeah.
It's very ironic that that's what it sort of feels like, right? But I guess what I would say is that when we talked about Fury Road, I think something we both felt about it is that the flaws in the world building you don't even think about because it's such a rich world building.
Yeah.
It is just so clear that everything in it has been thought through and that everyone has a backstory, and like there are these like comics prequels and stuff too. And what I suggest is that really richly imagined worlds have backstories to them, but not all of those backstories should be turned into the story.
Yeah,
right?
No, that's fair.
Characters in novels have backstories, but do all novels need a prequel novel to go into detail about that character's story? Like it's more important that the piece of art the central piece of art has all that richness. And maybe there's only like so far back you can go. Like, I don't know. It is a little bit puzzling. There is part of me that I'd like to figure that out too. I mean, I think that's one of the only interesting things to ask about the movie. But I also noticed, and maybe this is not true for you, but the movie like looked different to me. It didn't look as good.
I will say this. One of the things I noticed watching it was that there were a few moments where I think there was definitely CGI, and it didn't have to be. It was a little weird. Like there's a shot of the wives' vault, and I remember like noticing someone coming down the stairs, and it had to be CGI. Like there was no way like a normal person would have made those gestures. It was it was unnecessary was the thing. That was what puzzled me.
And just the opening shot in the green place feels really fake. Like I don't know, like it just doesn't feel like a real tree. So the whole thing just felt different to me.
Yeah. Like you're right about the green place. Like one of the least believable things about the green place was how like you see the green place and it literally goes right into desert. And I'm like, that's not the way topography works. So yeah, in contrast to Fury Road, this place felt more artificial.
All right, Dan, should we talk about the least we can do?
Yes. We have noticed on occasion that Anna or I, usually Anna, but sometimes myself, damns a movie with faint praise that would be very funny if it were on a movie poster as an endorsement. Anna, do you have any such faint praise for this film?
Covered this, which is I liked the child actress. The thing that I think would be something you might want to extract from a movie poster is I liked her so much, I forgot she was a child.
I have one as well. My damning with faint praise would be, this film answers some questions about Furiosa's backstory.
Yeah, it does. So, do we have any questions from the Discord, Dan?
What?
It's pieces of machinery and it's debris. There's lots of debris.
There's just lots of debris. Lots of debris. Yeah, I have a fair amount of debris actually on this one. I don't know about you, Anna.
Yeah, I've got stuff. I mean, my first note is why nose, which I already mentioned.
There were a lot of choices that I wondered, why are they doing this? Not just for the ghost. Did you notice the Queeg balls at one point?
I did. And I didn't understand. I didn't want.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how I feel about a lot of like some of this. It's funny. Like one of the big differences is the smaller touches in this movie just made me go, rather than being like, oh, cool. Like I get that smaller touch.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, a couple things I did like. First of all, I like this as a tradition. So I don't know if you noticed the Vuvulini general that you see at the very beginning is played by Elsa Pataki. She's been most prominently in the Fast and Furious franchise, actually. She's the woman that Vin Diesel winds up with while everyone thinks Michelle Rodriguez is dead. More importantly, she is Chris Hemsworth's wife. And so one of the things I like is that they have appeared as cameos in each other's films for a little while. It's a nice tradition. I kind of like it. Like, she did a reasonably forgettable action film for Netflix. Chris Hemsworth had a cameo in that. I kind of like this idea of the two of them having cameos. It's good. It's good for their relationship.
And I believe she has a dual role. Like she's that character and
Yes.
she's the disfigured character.
Was she the disfigured? Oh, yes, she was. She played two roles. You're right. Thank you. Ooh, that's good.
You have to really now that is being humble for a role.
Yeah. I did not even realize that was Elsa Pataki. I remember seeing the credits that she had played two roles, and I couldn't figure out who the other role was. But yeah, anyway, just good for them. Good for them. They're a hot couple. I hope they have lots of beautiful children.
Well, his daughter is in the Thor movie too.
Love, oh, you're right.
Right?
Yeah, sure. What do you got?
Oh, I note that these ambushes of Dementis go actually, at least at first, pretty smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me wonder, have these places not been ambushed before? Mm-hmm. Which brings up something that I also wanted to say about Fury Road, but Fury Road, the little nitpicks of Fury Road just pass on by because I enjoy myself so much.
Yeah.
Which is, shouldn't the wasteland be pretty mapped out by now?
Yes. Yeah.
So
I will say this, it's never stated outwardly, but I did like that it was a nice, nifty screenwriting trick to basically say, how do we stop everyone from looking for the green place? And the answer is, oh, it turns out they clearly thought the Citadel was the green place. So that was lovely. Also, they kept saying the phrase, I did like the scene where they're like, it's a place of abundance. And the history man is trying to explain what the word abundance means.
Yeah.
That was very funny. Again, that was high quality.
I am fairly certain no dogs were harmed in the making of this movie.
I was going to ask how you felt about the dogs in the film.
Well, one of the dodgy pieces of CGI I was actually happy about, which is the dog with the prosthetic.
Yeah.
I don't think the dog really had a prosthetic, but that was kind of cute. Mm-hmm. And she does get a puppy. I totally thought we were going to get Chekhov's puppy. When the dog would the dog would be told to attack her, but then recognizes her. Mm-hmm. That could have been good. That would have been kind of cool too. But the dogs, except for when they maul Jack, apparently.
Yeah.
Although we don't have to see that. That's another one of those scenes where we're told that torture is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And then don't actually have to watch it.
Again, this is where Miller makes the viewer do the work for him, which is better all around. It's more effective as well. One of the things I like about this film, it's not a huge thing. It's a maybe 15-second shot, but the passage of time when you see her hair fall off on an idle tree branch, and then it fast forwards and you see the branch grow and grow and grow. I thought it was just an effective way to sort of say, okay, and we're going forward a decade. And it was a beautiful shot.
I mean, I don't have a much more. Maybe just written off to Dementis being not a great strategizer. But why did they chase her and Jack after the bullet farm ambush when they run away? They could have just let them run away. There's no need to.
The one reason they might have done it was that they didn't want them to go back and tell Joe. That would have been, because then you have the advantage of surprise if they had sent someone else. But I agree with you that's...
Okay, and then the other thing is we know the bullet farmer survives to the next movie.
Yes, correct.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's an only if you've seen the next movie issue, but I guess when they did the takeover, he wasn't there.
There is no one... Yeah, but there is no one who will watch this film first. I mean, maybe in the future that'll be how it's done, but no one's watching. No one is going to go see this film unless they've seen Fury Road. Is the way I would put it.
Yeah.
One last thing for me, I did like the 3 motorcycle chariot. It was just a nice little piece of engineering. Although I wasn't entirely sure how he drove it. It wasn't entirely clear. But beyond that, a good effective sequencing.
I feel like there was this one moment where they showed some mechanism of like the pedal, like something he pulled, made the throttle press in. Like I had that same question and then felt like it was answered.
It was answered.
My bigger question is how do you drive a motorcycle with one arm?
That's correct.
Unless it's an automatic shift motorcycle, I guess. I don't know.
No, I don't know.
All right, I think we're
we've
just
rung
about
enough
done
from this film.
Discussing this movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, Dan, are we going to do a prequel episode about this episode? Because I have a whole backstory for why we talked about this.
The making of.
Yeah.
Furiosa Mad Max Saga -- Space the Nation / Scargiver Part 2.
And you actually watched Scargiver, is that?
I did. Yes, and the least you can say is I have watched the film. I watched the film till the end. That's the thing I can say. Again, and
it is a movie.
It is a movie that is not nearly as good as this film, which neither of us were crazy about. This is fucking Citizen Kane compared to the Scargiver, is what I would say.
All right. So, the best way to reach us, if you really want to reach us, is being a patron and join the Discord. We are on there. I think if you averaged out the amount of time I'm on there and that Dan's on there, we would both be on there a fair amount. But
I wax and wane, I confess. It's been, it kind of depends on the schedule. But I should be on there a little more.
It's summer, Dan. Divorced
it's divorced dad energy time, is what you're saying. Yes, I get it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We are also on social media, on Blue Sky most frequently. I am at Anna Marie Cox. And also, we keep saying this, there's at annamaricox.bluesky or something. Like there is a longer handle on Blue Sky, but you can find us that way. He's at Dan Dresser. I'm at Anna Marie Cox. I am also on Instagram, and I'm thinking about starting a separate Instagram for Bram and Exley.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
They are so fucking adorable together. Bram just adores Exley. I don't want to put any kind of definition on what kind of love it is. It's
you don't want to label it. You don't want to put labels on it.
I don't want to label it. It's just Bram wants to be next to Exley, wants to cuddle with Exley, wants to nuzzle and groom Exley. And then every once in a while, Exley grooms Bram. And he doesn't like it when Bram does the kneading, but who among us?
Not unreasonable, right? I was going to say. So, yes.
Yeah. I also have a website, Dan. Please tell people.
I like that you that you want me to do this. Yes, it is www.annamaricox.com, spelled the same, pronounced differently.
And Dan, I have a Substack.
I have a Substack. It's called Dresner's World. I write a variety of things about world politics, pop culture. I actually, by the time this comes out, you will be able to hear my thoughts on the wrap-up of Star Trek Discovery, which came to a close this past weekend.
All right. Yeah. And I sort of have a Substack. I haven't done it in a few weeks, but I actually am planning on just having an occasional essay. Because, Dan, the op-ed economy sucks.
It does. Yes. Yeah.
And I'm starting to think that maybe really doing a Substack, I still hate Substack. They're terrible. They're bad for journalism. But you know what else is bad for journalism? The way that journalism is now. So
it's the Dementis versus a Morton Joe choice of your, yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
And I'm tempted to say you and I should do a special episode or something about it because
actually,
I don't know if people realize
I kind of want
how bad for democracy it is.
Well, let me put it this way. I kind of want us to do a special episode about the future of big, dumb sci-fi films because one of the things we have not mentioned really, but is potentially worth a conversation is the fact that both this film and The Fall Guy, which admittedly not a sci-fi movie, but also supposed to be a huge, big budget film, have crashed and burned at the box office, which raises some disturbing questions about what are we going to see in the future?
Well, what's also interesting, and what I thought you were going to say about Fall Guy, because I know it's true of this movie, and I was curious if it was also true of Fall Guy, is that this movie was at least partially funded by private equity.
Oh, I did not know that. That's interesting.
Which and we can wrap in journalism
Yeah.
as far as like
But
what's
no, I think the two things. Like this way, I think there's a larger structural trend involving both of these things. That's my point. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, Dan, sometimes I do assume that people listen to this show not just because they like to hear us talk about science fiction,
Yeah.
like they also like to hear us talk about.
Yeah. So we can
stuff.
talk about that. Yeah.
Maybe. All right. So we've got Atlas coming up. I think we're going to do a special episode for patrons only about Madam Web. Mm-hmm. And then we start our great crossovers.
Yes, with Star Trek
series.
Generations. Yes.
Star Trek Generations. And until next time,
keep this channel open for more.